The clock struck 9 on a crisp Monday morning, and the hum of fluorescent lights filled the air as Emma stepped into the conference room. She had been called in unexpectedly by her manager, a rare occurrence after 18 years of unwavering dedication to the company. Her heart thudded against her chest like an insistent drumbeat, each step heavier than the last. Something wasn't right. She could feel it in the way her colleagues avoided eye contact, their faces tight with unease. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing off any escape. Across the table sat Mr. Grayson, his usually unreadable expression now etched with something that looked almost apologetic. Beside him was HR, their polished clipboard resting neatly on the table like a weapon waiting to strike. Emma's fingers curled around the back of the chair before she lowered herself into it, her mind racing through every possible scenario except the one about to unfold. "Emma," Mr. Grayson began, his voice steady but devoid of warmth, "we've made some difficult decisions recently regarding restructuring within the organization." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Restructuring? That word had floated around the office for weeks, whispered over coffee breaks and hushed phone calls. But no one thought it would touch her. Not Emma. She was the backbone of this place, the one who stayed late when deadlines loomed, who trained new hires with patience, who remembered everyone's birthdays and brought cupcakes on Fridays just because. As part of these changes, he continued, his tone clipped and clinical, "Your position has been eliminated." The room seemed to tilt slightly, as if gravity itself had shifted beneath her feet. For a moment, Emma wondered if she'd misheard him. 18 years. 18 years of pouring her soul into this company, showing up early, staying late, sacrificing weekends, holidays, even pieces of herself, all gone in 3 short sentences. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to speak. I don't understand. Is there anything I can do? Any other role?" Her voice sounded foreign, small and fragile compared to the confident woman she'd always been. Mr. Grayson exchanged a glance with HR, their faces blank masks of professionalism. "We're sorry, Emma, but this decision is final. We'll provide severance and support during your transition, of course." Of course. As if financial compensation could erase the years she'd given them. Emma felt the heat rise in her cheeks, not from anger, but from the sheer absurdity of it all. How could they sit there so calmly while dismantling everything she'd built? Yet, instead of crumbling, something inside her hardened. She straightened her spine, squared her shoulders, and met their eyes with a quiet resolve that surprised even herself. "I see," she said softly, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Without another word, she rose from her seat, walked to her desk, and began packing her belongings. Each item she placed into the box felt like shedding a layer of skin. Photos of smiling coworkers, sticky notes scribbled with reminders, the battered coffee mug gifted by her team. It was surreal, almost dreamlike, how quickly 18 years could be reduced to a cardboard box. When she finally handed over her laptop, a device that had become an extension of herself, she did so with a faint smile. Not out of resignation, but because deep down, she knew this wasn't the end. Somewhere beyond the shock and betrayal lay a flicker of hope, though she couldn't yet name what form it might take. And as she turned to leave, she glanced back at the office one last time, watching the chaos unfold without her. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. Walking out of the building felt like stepping into another world. The sun shone brightly overhead, casting sharp shadows across the pavement, but Emma barely noticed. Her hands trembled as they gripped the handles of the cardboard box containing her life's work, or rather, what was left of it. People bustled past her, oblivious to the turmoil brewing inside. They were strangers, yet they carried on with their lives as if nothing monumental had just happened. To them, she was invisible, just another face in the crowd. For a moment, Emma considered calling someone, anyone, to share the news. Her best friend Sarah? No, Sarah was traveling abroad and wouldn't understand the gravity of losing a job you'd held for nearly 2 decades. Her sister Lisa? Maybe, but Lisa had always been quick to offer unsolicited advice, and right now, Emma didn't want advice. She wanted silence. Quiet space to process the avalanche of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Instead, she wandered aimlessly, her feet carrying her toward the park where she used to eat lunch during warmer months. The park bench felt familiar under her thighs, its wooden slats worn smooth by countless sitters before her. She set the box down beside her and stared at the pigeons pecking at crumbs scattered across the ground. For the first time since leaving the office, she allowed herself to breathe deeply. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. The rhythm steadied her racing heart, but it did little to quiet the cacophony in her mind. Why hadn't she seen this coming? Sure, the company had been struggling, but she'd always assumed her loyalty would shield her from the axe. Hadn't she proven herself time and again? Memories flooded back unbidden, late nights spent perfecting presentations, mentoring junior staff members until they became confident professionals, organizing charity drives that brought the entire department together. All those moments, all those sacrifices, they weren't meaningless, were they? Or had she simply fooled herself into believing she mattered more than she actually did? A soft breeze rustled the leaves above her, and Emma closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. She tried to focus on the present, on the sensation of cool air brushing against her skin. But her thoughts kept circling back to the same question, what now? At 52, starting over felt daunting. The job market had changed so much since she'd last applied for positions. Buzzwords like agile and synergy dominated resumes, LinkedIn profiles replaced traditional networking, and algorithms decided who got interviews. Could she compete with younger candidates fresh out of college, armed with tech skills she barely understood? And then there was the fear, not just of rejection, but of irrelevance. 18 years at the same company meant she'd grown accustomed to being known, respected, valued. What if no one else saw her that way? What if she disappeared into obscurity, forgotten like yesterday's news? These questions gnawed at her, leaving her feeling hollow and adrift. Yet amid the uncertainty, something unexpected stirred within her, a spark of defiance. Yes, they had fired her. Yes, she was scared. But she was also alive. Still breathing. Still capable of making choices, of forging a new path, however uncertain it might be. Sitting there on that bench, surrounded by the sounds of nature and the distant laughter of children playing, Emma realized she had a choice. She could let this moment define her, or she could use it as fuel to redefine herself. As the afternoon wore on, Emma found herself walking home, her steps slower but steadier than before. The weight of the box in her arms no longer felt suffocating. Instead, it seemed symbolic, a tangible reminder of both loss and potential. When she reached her apartment, she placed the box gently on the kitchen counter and stood staring at it for several minutes. Then, without thinking too hard about why, she opened a drawer and pulled out a pen and notebook. Flipping to a blank page, she wrote 3 simple words at the top, "What's next?" That night, sleep eluded Emma. She tossed and turned, her mind replaying the day's events in vivid detail. Every conversation, every glance, every subtle shift in tone replayed itself like a broken record. She could still hear Mr. Grayson's voice, calm, detached, as he delivered the blow that shattered her sense of security. The memory burned, not because of anger, but because of disbelief. How could they dismiss her so easily after everything she'd done? But as dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Emma decided she wouldn't let bitterness consume her. Instead, she rose early, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and sat down at her dining table with the notebook she'd retrieved the night before. The page bearing the words "What's next?" stared back at her, daring her to fill the emptiness below. Slowly, deliberately, she began writing. At first, the ideas came haltingly. Should she apply for similar roles elsewhere? Update her resume? Reach out to former colleagues for leads? Practical concerns crowded her thoughts, but beneath them lurked something deeper, a yearning for purpose. For years, her identity had been tied to her job, to the structure and routine it provided. Now, stripped of that framework, she felt untethered. Free, yes, but also lost. So she pushed herself to think bigger, bolder. What dreams had she shelved in favor of stability? What passions had she neglected? By mid-morning, her list had grown surprisingly long. Start a blog. Learn photography. Volunteer at a local shelter. Take cooking classes. Write a novel. Each idea sparked a tiny flame of excitement, a reminder that life wasn't confined to cubicles and boardrooms. As she scribbled furiously, Emma felt a strange sense of liberation blooming within her. For the first time in years, she wasn't constrained by expectations or obligations. She was free to explore, to experiment, to fail, and maybe, just maybe, to succeed in ways she'd never imagined. Still, doubt lingered at the edges of her newfound optimism. Was it realistic to pursue such lofty goals? Could she really reinvent herself at this stage in life? These questions plagued her as she scrolled through online courses later that afternoon. There were dozens of options, ranging from graphic design to public speaking to entrepreneurship. Each course description promised transformation, growth, opportunity. But Emma hesitated, unsure where to begin. Then, scrolling aimlessly, she stumbled upon something unexpected, a free webinar titled, Finding Your Passion After 50. Intrigued, she signed up on impulse, hoping for guidance, or at least inspiration. That evening, as she logged in, she braced herself for clichés and platitudes. Instead, the speaker, a woman named Claire who radiated warmth and authenticity, shared stories of people who had embarked on second careers, started businesses, or pursued lifelong hobbies after hitting rock bottom. One story, in particular, resonated deeply with Emma. It was about a man named Greg, a retired accountant who had discovered pottery after being laid off at 62. At first, he treated it as a hobby, a way to pass the time. But over the years, his creations gained attention, leading to gallery exhibitions and private commissions. By the time Claire finished recounting his journey, tears pricked Emma's eyes. If Greg could transform his life so dramatically, why couldn't she? The webinar ended with a call to action: identify one thing you love doing and commit to exploring it further. Emma stared at her screen, her pulse quickening. Love doing? She thought back to her youth, to the days before responsibility weighed her down. Back then, she dreamed of becoming a writer. She devoured books voraciously, filling notebooks with poems and short stories. Somewhere along the way, those aspirations had faded, buried under the demands of adulthood. Until now. With trembling hands, Emma reopened her notebook and added a new entry: write. Just one word, but it carried immense weight. Writing wasn't just a hobby, it was a thread connecting her past to her future. A bridge between who she had been and who she could become. Determined to honor that connection, she spent the rest of the week researching writing workshops, joining online forums, and reading articles about storytelling techniques. Each discovery fueled her excitement, pushing her closer to taking the leap. But doubt remained a stubborn companion. What if she wasn't good enough? What if no one cared about her stories? These fears whispered incessantly, trying to pull her back into the safety of indecision. Yet every time they surfaced, Emma reminded herself of Greg's pottery. He hadn't started out perfect either. Perfection wasn't the point. The point was to try, to create, to live fully, even if it meant stumbling along the way. And so, on a rainy Saturday morning, Emma took her first step. She sat down at her computer, opened a blank document, and typed the words Chapter 1. Weeks passed, and Emma threw herself into her writing with a fervor she hadn't felt in years. Mornings were reserved for brainstorming sessions, afternoons for drafting chapters, and evenings for revising. Her tiny apartment transformed into a creative sanctuary, walls adorned with sticky notes outlining plot twists and character arcs. Coffee became her constant companion, fueling late-night bursts of inspiration. For the first time in ages, she felt alive, not just existing, but truly living. But creativity isn't born in isolation, and Emma soon realized she needed feedback. Tentatively, she joined an online writers group, hesitant to share her fledgling work with strangers. The first meeting left her nerves frayed. As she read aloud from her manuscript, her voice wavered, betraying her insecurities. To her surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Encouragement poured in from fellow writers, their comments sprinkled with constructive criticism that pushed her to refine her craft. Slowly, she began to trust not only her own abilities but also the community rallying around her. Encouraged by their support, Emma decided to attend a local literary festival. It was a bold move, stepping outside her comfort zone, but she craved connection with others who shared her passion. The event buzzed with energy, authors signing books, poets reciting verses, panels discussing everything from publishing trends to overcoming writer's block. Emma wandered from booth to booth, soaking it all in, until she stumbled upon a workshop titled Turning Pain into Prose. The facilitator, a seasoned novelist named Rachel, greeted participants with a warm smile. Writing is healing, she began, her voice rich with conviction. Our scars shape our stories, and our stories have the power to heal others. Emma felt a lump rise in her throat. Scars. Hers were still raw, tender wounds inflicted by 18 years of devotion dismissed in a single meeting. Yet here was Rachel, urging her to embrace them, to weave them into something meaningful. During the exercise portion of the workshop, Rachel asked attendees to write about a moment of profound change. Emma hesitated, her pen hovering above the page. Then slowly, words spilled forth, about the sterile conference room, the cold delivery of her termination, the ache of betrayal. But instead of stopping there, she delved deeper, exploring the resilience that had emerged in the aftermath. By the time she finished, tears blurred her vision. When Rachel invited volunteers to share their pieces, Emma surprised herself by raising her hand. Her voice trembled at first, but as she spoke, it grew stronger, steadier. The room fell silent, captivated by her vulnerability. When she finished, applause erupted, heartfelt and genuine. For the first time since losing her job, Emma felt seen, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Someone with a story worth telling. Inspired by the experience, Emma returned home determined to channel her emotions into her novel. She envisioned it as a tale of redemption, drawing parallels between her protagonist's journey and her own. Late nights stretched into early mornings as she poured her soul onto the page, crafting scenes that mirrored her struggles and triumphs. Characters came alive under her fingertips, their voices echoing her innermost thoughts. Writing became more than a hobby, it became catharsis. Yet, amidst the joy of creation, doubts crept back in. Would anyone care about her story? Could she navigate the daunting world of publishing? These questions haunted her, whispering insidious lies about failure and rejection. But Emma refused to let fear dictate her path. She remembered Greg's pottery, Claire's webinar, Rachel's workshop, all testaments to the courage required to chase dreams. Armed with renewed determination, she drafted query letters, researched agents, and submitted excerpts to competitions. Rejection emails trickled in, each one stinging, but she pressed on, undeterred. One chilly November evening, as snowflakes danced outside her window, Emma received an email that made her heart skip a beat. A small independent press wanted to publish her manuscript. The message was brief, professional, but to Emma, it felt monumental. Tears streamed down her face as she reread the words, unable to believe they were real. 18 years of sacrifice, pain, and perseverance had led her here, to this moment of validation, of possibility. But even as she celebrated, Emma knew this was only the beginning. Publishing a book wouldn't erase the scars of her past, nor would it guarantee success. What it did offer, however, was hope. Hope that her story might inspire others facing their own crossroads. Hope that she could continue growing, learning, evolving. And hope that perhaps, the collapse she'd witnessed wasn't an ending, but a rebirth. In the months that followed, Emma embraced her new identity as a writer with a zeal that astonished even herself. Promoting her debut novel proved challenging yet exhilarating, forcing her to step into roles she'd never imagined. Interviews, book signings, social media campaigns, each task stretched her beyond her comfort zone, yet each victory bolstered her confidence. Readers responded enthusiastically, sharing how her words resonated with their own experiences of loss and renewal. Letters poured in, thanking her for giving voice to emotions many struggled to articulate. These connections deepened Emma's resolve to keep creating, to keep sharing. She enrolled in a memoir writing class, eager to delve further into personal storytelling. There, she met individuals from diverse backgrounds, each carrying unique tales of resilience. Together, they formed a tight-knit community, cheering one another on through victories big and small. Through these interactions, Emma discovered a profound truth: stories connect us. They remind us we're not alone, that our struggles are universal, our triumphs shared. Despite her successes, challenges persisted. Marketing strategies fell flat, reviews occasionally stung, and self-doubt lingered like an unwelcome shadow. Yet with each obstacle, Emma grew stronger, more adaptable. She learned to celebrate progress rather than perfection, to view setbacks as opportunities for growth. Her journey taught her patience, persistence, and the importance of embracing imperfection. Meanwhile, whispers of change rippled through her former workplace. Layoffs continued, morale plummeted, and rumors swirled about impending mergers. Former colleagues reached out, seeking advice or commiseration. Emma listened empathetically, offering guidance gleaned from her own trials. Though bitterness tempted her, she chose compassion instead, recognizing that blame served no purpose. Instead, she focused on empowering others, encouraging them to find strength in adversity. As spring blossomed, bringing renewal and promise, Emma stood at a crossroads once again. Opportunities abounded, speaking engagements, collaborative projects, potential sequels. Each choice carried risks and rewards, demanding careful consideration. Yet unlike before, Emma approached decisions with clarity and conviction. She trusted her instincts, honoring the lessons etched into her soul over 18 transformative years. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, Emma faced it with open arms and an indomitable spirit. For she had learned that endings often mask beginnings, that collapses pave the way for rebirths. And as she gazed toward the horizon, pen poised and heart ablaze, she knew one thing for certain: her story was far from over. As Emma stood on the cusp of this new chapter, she allowed herself a moment to reflect. The past year had been a whirlwind of emotions: pain, fear, doubt, joy, triumph, all swirling together like colors on an artist's palette. What emerged was something beautiful yet imperfect, vibrant yet raw. She thought back to that fateful morning when her world seemed to crumble around her. Back then, she couldn't have imagined how much growth could come from loss, how much light could emerge from darkness. Now, as she prepared for the release of her second book, a memoir chronicling her journey through upheaval and reinvention, she felt at peace with the chaos. The launch event took place in a cozy bookstore tucked away in the heart of the city. Friends, family, former colleagues, and strangers filled the space, their faces glowing under soft string lights. Emma stepped onto the small stage, clutching her notes but feeling no need for them. This story was etched into her soul, it flowed naturally, effortlessly. As she began to speak, her voice carried the weight of experience tempered by hope. "I used to think my worth was tied to a title," she confessed, her gaze sweeping across the room. "But life has a way of stripping us down to our essence, showing us who we really are beneath the layers of expectations and obligations. When I lost my job, I didn't just lose income or status, I lost a part of myself. Or so I thought." She paused, letting the words settle. The audience leaned forward, hanging on every syllable. "What I found instead was freedom. Freedom to dream again, to create without limits, to embrace uncertainty not as a threat but as an invitation. Writing saved me. It gave me purpose when I felt adrift, connection when I felt isolated, and courage when I doubted my ability to start over." Applause erupted before she even finished, spontaneous and heartfelt. Tears pricked her eyes as she scanned the crowd, recognizing familiar faces among the sea of strangers. There was Sarah, her best friend, clapping enthusiastically despite jet lag from her recent trip abroad. Lisa, her sister, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, pride radiating from her smile. Even Mr. Grayson appeared near the back of the room, nodding solemnly. His presence surprised her, but his quiet acknowledgement spoke volumes. After the reading, people lined up to purchase copies of her book, eager to share their own stories with her. A young woman recounted being laid off during the pandemic and struggling to rebuild her confidence. An older man described retiring early and rediscovering his love for painting. Each conversation reinforced what Emma already knew: resilience is universal, and shared experiences foster healing. Late that evening, after the crowd dispersed and the bookstore closed its doors, Emma lingered behind to tidy up. The owner handed her a cup of tea, congratulating her on a successful night. They chatted briefly about future events, partnerships, and ideas for expanding her reach. For the first time, Emma entertained the possibility of building a career around storytelling, not because she needed validation, but because she wanted to keep inspiring others. Walking home under a starlit sky, Emma felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Her journey hadn't followed a straight path, it had twisted and turned, challenging her at every step. But those detours had shaped her into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. She realized now that the collapse she'd witnessed wasn't just the end of her old life, it was the beginning of something far greater. When she reached her apartment, she set her keys on the counter and glanced at the cardboard box still sitting there, untouched since the day she brought it home. 18 years of memories packed neatly inside, waiting to be unpacked or forgotten. Smiling softly, she decided it was time to let go. One by one, she sorted through its contents. Photographs went into albums, mementos into keepsake boxes, documents into folders labeled nostalgia. The process was cathartic, each item releasing a fragment of her past so she could fully inhabit her present. By the time she finished, dawn was breaking outside her window, casting golden light across the room. Emma stepped onto her balcony, breathing in the crisp morning air. Below, the city stirred to life, bustling with energy and promise. She felt a surge of gratitude, for the hardships that had taught her resilience, for the people who had supported her along the way, and for the infinite possibilities stretching ahead. And then, as if answering an unspoken question, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from a literary agent expressing interest in representing her next project, a novel inspired by the stories she'd heard from readers and fellow writers. Her heart leapt with excitement, not because of the opportunity itself, but because it symbolized everything she'd fought for, a chance to keep growing, creating, and connecting. Emma smiled, her lips curving into a serene expression. Life, she realized, wasn't about avoiding storms but learning to dance in the rain. And as she stood there, bathed in sunlight, she knew she was ready for whatever came next.